Hey guys, Miss Christie here. Today we're going to start learning a little bit about Greek mythology and kind of the creation story, the way they think that the world started. And I have here as told by the Greeks, and the reason for that is that frankly we have lots of different versions of the story. Remember, most of this is told in the oral tradition, some written, but regardless, some people tell it one way, some people tell it another way. So you may have heard stuff a little different, and that's okay because that happens with mythology. So we're going to start off here with a little video clip. I say little, it's a little long, but I think it's interesting. In the beginning, there was only chaos. Let's see what chaos we had. Oh, we got to start at the beginning.
Fire. Before Zeus and the Olympians, or Kronos and the Titans. Before the creation of the earth, there was nothing. Nothing but the great void known as chaos. And who was chaos, you ask? Well, she was the conscious void of nothingness before all matter came into existence. She was the first immortal. She was the beginning. One moment chaos was still, but in the next she began to quake. The roar of the rumbling void grew larger and larger. Ripples of energy were constantly released as all of existence shook. But suddenly everything stopped, and the void became silent. Then there was a flash, an enormous explosion encased the void and blasted outwards. And emerging from that explosion was the first generation, the primordials. This was the beginning of gods and goddesses, the beginning of epic heroes and ferocious creatures, the beginning of Greek mythology. First to emerge from chaos was a dark-skinned woman covered in plants. She had a large bosom and green hair filled with thorns. This woman was Gaia, the primordial goddess of the earth. A moment after her emergence, Gaia studied her surroundings. Finding nothing, she began to create her new home by encircling herself with dirt. The orb of dirt grew larger and larger while a jungle of plants began to flourish and cover its surface. This orb was now Gaia's new form. Gaia was the earth, and so the earth was alive and conscious. Next to emerge from chaos was a dark-skinned man with rough diamond-like skin. This man was Tartarus, the primordial god of the pit. He glanced at the earth and decided its deepest parts would be his home. So he dug a tremendous cavern deep within the earth. This pit was surrounded by walls of solid stone and minerals, with the ceiling covered in drooping stalactites that were bigger than trees. The floor of the pit was carpeted with jagged hills of stones and rivers of magma. Pleased with his new home, Tartarus fused with his creation. This pit would in the future become the worst possible location in all of Greek mythology. It was named after its creator. It was the torturous pit of Tartarus. The third to emerge from chaos was a light-skinned woman with black hair that twinkled with tiny white lights. Out of her back were two black wings that shined just as bright as her hair. This woman was Nyx, the primordial goddess of the night. A moment later, the last immortal emerged from chaos. It was a man completely covered in shadow. Not a single trace of his skin could be seen. On his back were two black wings leaking a shadowy mist. This man was Erebus, the primordial god of darkness. With Erebus' sudden appearance, Nyx's eyes quickly found his stare. That glance was the first spark of something us mortals would always yearn for. It was love. While Nyx and Erebus were exploring their love, Gaia was lonely and so decided to bring new life to the earth. Without any father, Gaia first gave birth to a fully formed man who stood 8 feet tall. He had white hair that flowed like the wind, and a great white beard groomed to perfection. He was fit, strong, and ridiculously intimidating. This man was Uranus, primordial god of the sky. Once out of Gaia's womb, Uranus began to form a dome that encircled the earth. It was light blue in color and stretched many miles away. He called it the sky. When the sky finished forming, Uranus took a deep breath and blew. Out of his lungs came the very air that all life would someday breathe. Satisfied with his work, he fused with the sky so he could watch all of those below him.
All right, so we're going to kind of stop that part right there and then go forward. So a lot of times Greek mythology doesn't even talk so much about before that early with chaos. So we have Gaia and Erebus and Nyx, and sometimes you see Gaia spelled differently, and Tartarus, and the next part it would have talked about was Pontus, which was the sea, and Uranus, the sky. So Gaia and Uranus actually ended up making, sorry, I got to tell Zoe by there, had 3 sets of children. They had this 3 Cyclops, they had 3 Hecaton chairs, and then they had 12 children that were the the Titans, excuse me. What in the world am I talking about? The Titans. So the Cyclops were those one-eyed monsters. The Hecaton carries were 100-handed monsters, and then the Titans. So there you can see here the Cyclops are sometimes depicted like this and sometimes depicted like this. It just kind of depends on who's doing the drawing or the storytelling. That's the Hecaton cares. And those, you can see 100 hands, and they are all quite strange. There's a lot of heads on that thing, too. And then the 12 Titans. So this is kind of a family tree of the first original 12 Titans. Well, Uranus was a cruel husband and father, and Gaia said she was going to kill Uranus, so she asked her kids to help her. Well, the only one who would help her is her son Cronus, and you can kind of see a kind of a depiction of him here. And Cronus was successful, and from Uranus's blood sprang giants and Miladies, which were actually ash tree nymphs, and the Furies, but also Aphrodite, who was the goddess of beauty, and ended up taking her place with the Olympians later. Kronos was starting to lose. They started battling, and Kronos sent the Cyclops and the Hecaton carries down to Tartarus, and he had them guarded by a huge dragon called the Campe. So Kronos married his sister Rhea. But there was a prophecy, and it was that one of Kronos' children would end up defeating him. So he ate his children. Every time a new child was born, he just ate it. So Rhea decided she, of course, didn't like that. So she disappeared down to the island of Crete when she knew she was pregnant. And then after she had her baby, she wrapped a stone up, and left the baby there to be raised by the gods and goddesses there, the mermaids or whatever was there. I'm sorry, not really mermaids, but the nymphs. And she had them raise her son, and she took back to Kronos a stone wrapped up in blankets. And he ate it. He didn't pay much attention to that. And that baby ended up being Zeus. So, just like her parents, Rhea conspired with Zeus to kill the father Kronos. And when he did, he actually gave Kronos this drink that made him vomit and continually vomit. And when he did, out came all his brothers and sisters who are the Olympians. That's the people you hear about a little bit more. Hestia kind of fades away. We don't hear as much about her. She was the goddess of home and hearth. And when we talk about the original Olympians, usually Aphrodite takes her place here. Um, Hera was the goddess of women and family. Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. Poseidon, the god of sea storms and earthquakes. Hades took over the underworld, and Zeus was the god of the sky, thunder, and lightning. Well, of course, the Titans didn't like that, so the Titans fought against the Olympians, and you can see there's a lot more Titans than Olympians, and the Olympians were starting to lose the war, and they're called the Olympians because they lived on Mount Olympus. Well, to turn the tide, Zeus brought back the Cyclops and the Hecatoncheires out of Tartarus. And when he did, they rewarded him by giving him his lightning rod that you always see him with. And when they won, they punished Atlas was kind of the ringleader of all of the Titans. And so Zeus punished him by making him hold up the earth for the rest of his days. This is just an actual little bit better family tree for you to look at, just in case you were curious and wanted to see a little bit more about it. So that's kind of how all that started. And if you need to, you're going to have a quiz. And if you need to go back over this, no problem. It's okay to look up your answers. Have a great day.